Hi, I'm Amy Poehler. For the last year, the No Ceilings Initiative and its partners have been compiling data about the state of gender equality around the world.
The report looks at the progress women and girls have made in the last 2 decades. The conclusion? Despite some significant gains, we're not there yet on gender equality, at home or abroad.
It's why many iconic women recently haven't been on billboards, posters, magazines, and even online.
And it's why we're not here today.
Wait, what do you mean we're not here?
Like, we're not in the scenes because it's just our voices. Didn't they explain the concept to you?
Well, yeah, but I wasn't listening. Sorry.
Did you know that the U.S. is one of only 9 countries that doesn't provide for paid maternity leave? Or how about the fact that 1 in 4 girls worldwide is married before her 18th birthday?
On a brighter note, in the U.S., women now earn the majority of college degrees. But we only make up 5% of Fortune 500 CEOs. That is a lot of wasted pantsuits.
Not to mention the fact that women everywhere still don't earn the same as men. For example, in the US, women make just 78 cents to every man's dollar.
That's unbelievable.
Please. Rude.
How dare you?
Are we? Wait, I'm not there. I'm confused.
What you heard today are just 4 of almost 1 million data points on the state of gender equality.
So make time to explore the data.
Spread the word.
And take action.
Because the sooner we learn about the issues,
the sooner we can get there.
Oh, look at that. We all synced up.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to all of those joining us via live stream from across the globe. I'm America Ferreira, and I couldn't be more excited to kick off this incredible program with you all today. What you just heard is true. We're not there yet when it comes to gender equality, not here in the United States and not anywhere around the world. And it's up to us to get there. Over the past 24 hours, there has been an exciting and incredible effort building to do just that. From billboards and magazine covers, Twitter and Facebook feeds, so many people and partners across the country have come together to spread the word, engage their communities, and make this statement. We're just not there yet. But progress is possible, and that's exactly why we are here today. Because in order to get there, we don't just need data, we need voices and stories from the women and girls and the advocates for women and girls to help tell us the way. Growing up, I never heard these stories, not in school, not on TV, not in movies. I didn't see how girls all around the world were living, how they were struggling, how they were achieving, and how their lives could possibly relate to my own. I didn't know I could be a part of the bigger conversation because I didn't know such a conversation existed. Last April, I had the incredible opportunity to join No Ceilings at one of the first No Ceilings conversations here in New York City at the Lower East Side Girls Club. There, I think some of them are here with us today. There, I joined these amazing girls, a group of middle schoolers who shared their experiences growing up as young women today. Though they spoke of facing real challenges, together their voices echoed a deep belief that the future is full of possibilities. And that's what these conversations came to be. A series of incredible moments that unite communities from New York City to Lucknow, India, from Denver to Dublin on Twitter, Skype, and everywhere in between. Each conversation let us hear directly from the women and girls and the men and boys about where we've seen progress and where ceilings still exist. It gave us valuable insight about how we can break those hardest ceilings and unlock our boundless potential. Now here we are, almost 1 year later, and about to raise the curtain on what I know will be the ultimate no ceilings conversation. So let's get started. Please help me welcome to the stage the incredible women who have brought us all here today: Melinda Gates, Chelsea Clinton, and Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Yay! Thank you so much. Hello. Thank you.
Thank you, America, and thank you to everyone who is joining us this morning, whether here in this room in New York City or tuning in live from around the world. And thank you to the Best Buy Theater, Empire Entertainment, Good Spot, Microsoft, and Reveal 42 for making this event possible. I also want to give a special welcome to their excellencies, the President of Croatia and the President of Liberia, for joining us today. You'll hear their inspiring remarks later in the program. Like America, I have been completely awed by the incredible swell of people and partners who joined together yesterday to make a bold and important statement, whether by removing themselves from pictures or making their presence known at the UN Women's International Women's Day March here in New York City. That while we've made great progress over the last 20 years, we're just not there yet when it comes to gender equality, and that's just not good enough. The data and findings of the Full Participation Report help tell the story of gender equality today. There has been tremendous progress and woefully little in other areas. Certain barriers have fallen, and other barriers remain entrenched. And yet new tools and opportunities create possibilities for progress and true equality that were literally unimaginable only a few years ago. To help bring some of the Full Participation Report data to life, today we'll hear the inspiring voices of leaders, of communities, of companies, of countries, who are accelerating progress, closing gaps, and making sure that women and girls have every right and every opportunity to achieve full participation today and every day into the future. And because of all of this, our work, the report, the very reason that I believe all of us are here today, is ultimately about the future that America mentioned before, one of hope and possibility for all of us, women and men, boys and girls. We're not there yet, but together we can be.
Thank you, Chelsea. It's so great to be here today with the Secretary and with all of you in the room here who work so tirelessly to help improve the lives of women and girls around the globe. I'm a computer scientist at heart, and I think many of you have probably heard Bill and me describe ourselves actually as data geeks. And that's because we believe that data is knowledge, and knowledge is power. Today, we're launching the Full Participation Report because the data that it contains gives us more power to help women and girls build a better future for everyone. The most rewarding part of the job that I have today is traveling and meeting women and girls from all over the world who are striving for the same goal, a good life for themselves and for their family. Their courage and ingenuity when you talk to them against the long odds is that that's all the evidence I need to know that equality for women and girls must be my top priority. I turned 50 this last year, and milestones, I think, are a good time for reflection. I agree, I love being 50. You'll get there, Chelsea.
May I be so fortunate?
And I spent a lot of time, really, over the summer during that birthday, reflecting and thinking about what I want to accomplish the rest of my life. And like you, I want to make sure I'm doing all the things that will help women and girls the very most. And so this report that we're launching today, it can help each of us answer for ourselves where we want to invest. By studying the areas where women and girls have made the most progress in the last 20 years, we can learn to replicate these successes in other areas. And because the report identifies the biggest gaps, where they are, we have essentially what amounts to a blueprint now for action. So today, you're going to hear from leaders who I believe will convince you that now is the time to act. You'll be motivated by brilliant strategists who've devised ways to act most effectively. And I think you'll be inspired by heroes who act every day to help the women and girls who hold our shared future in their hands.
Well, Chelsea and Melinda have really set the tone for today, for the report, and what we hope will be the actions that each of you will take going forward. Because this is about building a better, brighter future for everyone. You know, when women and girls have the opportunity to participate, we can lift up not just ourselves, but our families, communities, even our countries. So this isn't just a story about women and girls. It is a universal story about the kind of world we want for our children and grandchildren. The good news, based on 20 years of data from more than 190 countries collected by the Clinton Foundation and the Gates Foundation through the No Ceilings Project, is that there has never been a better time in history to be born female. You know, the gains that Chelsea and Melinda spoke about show that progress is possible. But that's just part of the story. The data also shows how far we still have to go. In 1995, at the UN's Fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing, the international community pledged to work toward the full participation of women and girls in all aspects of life. Today, 2 decades later, it's clear we're not there yet. We still have a lot of work to do, and we're excited for you to dig into this data yourself, to use it, to share it, to learn from it, to get motivated by it. At noceilings.org, you can learn something fast or take a deep dive into the areas that interest you most, including the compelling stories of women and girls from around the world who make all of the statistics come alive. I want to thank Melinda for being such a terrific partner in this work and for being such a great leader on this and so many other crucial challenges. I also want to thank all the partners who helped collect, gather, and amplify this data, especially Droga 5, the Economist Intelligence Unit, Fathom Information Design, Scratch, and the World Policy Analysis Center. This was a real team effort. They have all contributed to a product that I hope will open eyes, spark debate, and spur all of us to action. This data is a benchmark of our progress, but also a roadmap for the work ahead. So thank you for joining us as we take on this great unfinished business of the 21st century. So let's start. Chelsea?
Thanks, Mom. Thank you, Linda. Let's start with some areas where we know we have made good progress. One of the greatest success stories for women and girls over the past 20 years is in health. There have been remarkable improvements in women's access to care. In 2015, to echo what my mother just said, we can say absolutely, without question, that women and girls are living longer, healthier lives than ever before. For example, in just 20 years, the rate of maternal mortality has decreased by more than 40% across the globe. But we cannot mistake progress for success. Despite those gains, progress has been uneven, particularly among poor, rural, and marginalized women, including right here in the United States. The progress we have made isn't only about or for women alone, however, because we know that when we invest in the health of women and girls, we're ultimately investing in the health of our families, our communities, and our countries. And many of these critical investments that have helped ensure that women and girls are leading longer, healthier lives have been made in skilled birth attendants and midwives. Midwives, just like Jeanette Deluzman of the Midwives for Haiti, whose remarkable care has helped generations of Haitians be born safely and to grow up healthy and to themselves give birth to healthy children. I'd like to now welcome Jeanette Thulisman to share her story.
Hello. Now I am going to speak in my language, Creole. Pa gen aucun plus passé espoir, ak plus soulagement qui bay passé premier rel.
There is no sound more hopeful and more relief-giving than the first furious cry of a healthy newborn child. Nothing more moving than the moment a mother first holding a new son or daughter. I have had the privilege of witnessing many births all my life. As a young girl growing up in a small village in the Haitian countryside, I would accompany my mother, who was what we call a matron, a birth attendant who, with no formal training, whenever she went to help women in labor. My mother was devoted to her work and brought countless babies into the world. But at least I saw firsthand how dangerous, because of a lack of resources and training, childbirth could be for poor women. In Haiti, where there are just 200 obstetricians and fewer than 100 midwives serving a population of 10 million people, too many children do not survive to take their first breaths, or just as tragic, their mothers do not live to hear their baby's first cries. But I believe we can change this story. In fact, it already is changing. My name is Jeanette Thulisman, and I am a midwife in Hesh, Haiti. Because I became a midwife because I wanted to save women's lives. In 2010, I was lucky to be selected to complete my midwifery training with the NGO Midwives for Haiti. I did well in my course, and I was very honored to be invited to stay on as a teacher. Today, with the support of another NGO, Every Mother Counts, I have been able to help others while building a better life for myself and my family. Most importantly, I have found my life's calling to train and, I hope, inspire more and more women to serve Haiti's mothers and children. I know that with every new midwife I help educate, we have the chance to save and improve the lives of hundreds, even thousands more women and children every year. Since 2006, with the support of Every Mother Counts and other donors, Midwives for Haiti has trained 95 skilled midwives who are now working in hospitals and birth centers across Haiti to ensure that more and more women safely deliver healthy babies. Our midwives are also reaching women in more remote villages through our mobile prenatal clinics, educating them about proper prenatal care and the danger signs to look for so they can seek medical care before it is too late. Just the other day, I learned that a new father had been searching the whole town for me because he wanted to give me 2 chickens. A few days before, his wife had delivered her baby at home, but had bled heavily after the birth. He brought her to the hospital, where I quickly got 2 IVs started, gave her fluids and blood, and prepared her for emergency surgery. We were able to save her life. It turns out that this new father was searching high and low for me because he wanted to thank me for my quick thinking and for keeping his family whole. This is why I do what I do. Thank you all for this opportunity to share my work with you.
Thank you, Jeanette, for sharing your inspiring story and even more for the remarkable work that you and Midwives for Haiti do every day. Now, please welcome to the stage, once again, Melinda Gates, along with Dr. Helene Gayle and Bruce Wilkinson.
Well, thanks to Jeanette. And as Chelsea noted, there's so much good news to celebrate in women's health today. Midwives, such as Jeanette talked about, are very much part of the good news story. Maternal mortality rate has fallen by nearly half. That is 42% globally. It's one of the best news stories in health. And in short, women are living longer. They're healthier lives. They're living longer than ever before, whether you're living in Africa or Southeast Asia or anywhere on the globe. So this is good news for mothers and good news for families and their children as well. Now, the Gates Foundation is focused on health because we believe that a productive life begins first and foremost with having good health. And research has shown that healthy mothers are the linchpin then for healthy families. Healthier mothers, mean healthier children, stronger families, and more prosperous communities. Now, tragically, though, the inverse is also true. For instance, children who are born to mothers who die in childbirth are more likely to die, in the first 2 months of life. And even though we've made great strides, there's still a lot of work to do. So every day, 800 women continue to die from largely preventable complications that are related to either pregnancy or childbirth. And more than 220 million women who don't want to be pregnant still don't use modern methods of family planning. Now, family planning is vital to building better societies because when women and their partners have access to contraceptives, everyone benefits. Maternal mortality rates drop, children are healthier, they're better educated, and incomes rise. I'll never in my life forget a conversation I had with a woman outside of Nairobi in Kenya. I was with a group of women and I was asking them what family planning meant to them. And a woman named Marianne stood up at the very end of our conversation and she said, she was holding a little girl in her arms, and she said, I want to give every good thing to this child before I have another one. And I thought that single sentence expresses perfectly why family planning is so important all over the world. So I'd like to turn now to Helene Gayle, the president and CEO of CARE, to share with us some of the innovative efforts to address the current challenges. Helene?
Well, thanks so much, Melinda, and I also want to thank the Clinton family for this convening. I think this is an incredible opportunity to talk about the challenges, but also talk about the things that we know can make a big difference. And I'll talk a little bit from the perspective of CARE and some of the work that we're involved in. And CARE works in places with some of the worst child and maternal health indicators in the world. So we've seen these transformational changes firsthand. And we're really proud to be part of the progress over the last 20 years. Now, key to this success has been efforts to work closely with local partners, community health workers, and with governments. For example, and something you know well, our work together in Bihar, one of India's largest and poorest states, where we've launched an integrated family health initiative to improve the health and survival of women and newborns by making sure that we are meeting the needs of women throughout their childbearing years and their children. And with the Gates Foundation, we're using real innovation there, innovative strategies such as mobile phone technology to manage care and counsel pregnant women and mothers and newborns. We're focusing on training particularly frontline health workers to encourage them to set team-based goals and fostering a commitment to improving the health of entire communities, irrespective of things like caste, religion, or geographic distance that used to keep people from accessing health and health services. So as a result, health workers are making higher quality household visits, and these rates of visits have increased from under 40% to nearly 90%. And as a result, nutrition, immunization levels, and education around family planning have improved. CARE is now working with the government of India to scale up that project throughout the state of Bihar. That's 100 million population, so this is a huge accomplishment. We're also integrating family health services across our broad portfolio of work in development more broadly. So as an example, this is a picture of Yufan, a 24-year-old mother and the president of her Village Savings and Loans Group, a savings-based microfinance activity that we have in Cambodia. There we have public health workers who make regular visits to her savings group to be able to raise awareness not only about a range of other issues, but particularly about maternal and child health. As a result, she decided to use her savings to pay for a safe transportation to a hospital where she gave a safe birth to her second child. Now we know what needs to be done. We need locally owned solutions that focus on investments in high quality health infrastructure and systems, on overcoming the discriminatory practices that have kept women from reaching care, and in mobilizing health activists who can really make a difference. So we know what works, we just need to continue to put those things in practice.
That's great, Fleen. Thank you so much. So let me turn now to Bruce Wilkinson, who's spent so much of his career in Africa. He's the president and CEO of the Catholic Medical Mission Board. Bruce, can you share a little bit with us, some of the insights that you have from this work and really the role of faith-based organizations? What role will they have now and what role will they continue to play as we go forward in the future for women?
Great. Well, thank you, Melinda, and also thank you for your leadership, especially, and to both the Clinton and the Gates Foundations. Absolutely stellar work. Being in this work for 30 years and living on the continent of Africa for 30 years, and now to see the difference that these types of foundations are making to our lives and the progress we see in women and girls' health is just absolutely amazing. Faith-based groups have played an important role, right? The partnerships here are amazing, they're vibrant, they actually move. We're improving children's and women's health, especially in the poorest and hardest to reach communities, where, thank you, where poorest often live, and especially the faith communities have that reach and that credibility with community leadership within those. We know from the data and from our experience that reaching these people in extreme poverty, as the World Bank reminds us, is very difficult, especially women and girls. Often it's faith-based groups such as CMMB that you'll find are most effective at reaching the most remote and the poverty-stricken areas, especially as we partner with community leadership. That community leadership is so important to establish. For instance, in some African countries, between 30 and 60% of healthcare is provided by faith-based groups in those countries. Our presence in those poor communities, our deep-rooted local relationships, and our ability to provide care at low cost should be leveraged to promote major advances in maternal survival. Just last week, I got back from EZO in Western Equatoria in South Sudan. I visited the EZO clinic there, and at EZO clinic, the community and CMMB were celebrating the 1,500th birth with no loss of life, neither moms or kids.
Wow. Wow. That's neat.
South Sudan has the highest maternal mortality rate in the world. Yet, this is what can be done when you work locally and through the faith connections that we had in that community. So over the past 20 years, we've really seen a much greater scale and quality of that collaboration and partnership amongst faith groups. The collaboration has delivered unprecedented improvements in coverage, access, and quality of what I would call low-cost solutions at the community level. 2015 marks a monumental turning point in the global development. The new Sustainable Development Goals are being charted for the next 15 years. So as we develop the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and let me remind you, I work a lot with the World Bank, and we know that to reach people who are living in extreme poverty, especially women and girls, for this next round, this next 15 years, I hate to say it's not going to be as easy as the first, because the easy was very hard. We worked all very hard in this past 15 years. Yet to reach those who live in extreme poverty, especially women and girls, in this next round of commitments, which the faith-based community, which the private sector, government, foundations, and all the actors and the community groups that are present here today just must move the ball forward. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Helene. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
When we empower girls through education, a world of potential and promise is unleashed. Over the last 2 decades, the gender gap in primary education has nearly closed. And in most of the world, primary education is now tuition-free. For the millions of girls who are racing into elementary school at nearly the same rates as boys, that world of potential and promise is now within reach. And yet, for millions more girls, particularly older girls, full participation remains far away. While increased girls' primary school attendance is a cause for celebration, there are remarkably fewer girls making the transition to secondary school, and in far too many places, fewer still making the transition from secondary school to college and university. And at every level, girls face enormous challenges to pursuing their education, the quality and safety of which are often not guaranteed. The desire for an education has been described as being akin to a physical hunger, a need to fill oneself with knowledge and to energize one's mind and heart. But in too many places, various physical, cultural, social, and economic barriers confront and prevent many girls from attaining their basic human right to go to school. Our next speakers, Shabana Baji Razik and Uzma, represent the brave and remarkable girls and young women who fight against all odds to claim their right to go to and to stay in school, and who are standing up effectively for girls and young women across the world. So please join me in welcoming Shabana and Uzma.
Thank you. I turn 25 tomorrow, and thank you. And let me tell you why I will be a hopeful 25-year-old. When I was ready to start elementary school 19 years ago, the Taliban took over Afghanistan and made it illegal for girls to go to school. So for almost every day for the next 6 years, I would walk through the streets of Kabul into a darkened living room that served as a secret school. If caught by the Taliban, the punishment could have been severe, including death. The crime? We were girls, and we wanted to learn. But you see, my Afghan parents were committed to educating their Afghan daughters no matter the risk. My father used to tell me when I was scared, or tired, or wanted to give up, education, he would remind me, is the only thing that no one can take away from you. That is the Afghanistan I was raised to believe in. An Afghanistan that knows the value of its daughters. I was 12 when Taliban fell, and I set my foot in a formal school for the very first time in my life. I did well and won a scholarship to go to school in the US. The year I entered Middlebury College, I learned that only 6% of Afghan women had a bachelor's degree. Sitting on that bucolic campus, I felt extremely lucky, but also overwhelmed, guilty, and morally obligated. I decided then to use my education to make sure that other Afghan girls have similar opportunities. So I co-founded SOLA, School of Leadership Afghanistan, which is the first and only boarding school for girls in my country. It's a haven where girls can focus on their studies, away from the household obligations that consume them at home. In a country torn apart by ethnic tension, it's a school where girls from all provinces and ethnic groups can study and learn from one another. SOLA's near-term goal is to expand from 34 students from 14 provinces to 340 students from every province, our future leaders. To date, 42 SOLA students have received 42 scholarships to 42 institutions in 6 countries. Uzma is one of them. She came to SOLA in 2012 and is now a student in a private school here in the US.
Who I am today is the product of my yesterdays, and those yesterdays taught me nothing in this world is more important than my education. When war engulfed Afghanistan, my family fled to Pakistan. As an Afghan, I wasn't allowed to attend school there. But I used my never citizen card to sneak in. I will never forget the day when my friend told to the teacher that I was an Afghan. It was a great miracle from my God that my teacher completely ignored my identity, but not my eagerness to learn. My parents are my role models, especially my father, who's like Shabana Jan's father, prioritize education. My father has said, "We named you Uzma, which means grand, and we expect you to bring grand changes to the world with your education." I was 11 years old when we returned to Afghanistan. We heard about SOLA, and I applied. It was still hard for Afghan girls to attend school, and there were no other boarding school for girls. It was amazing. Students from different provinces and ethnicities were there, which is rare. Last June, I left Kabul to study in a private school in the US, and there are not enough hours in the day for me to learn. Here, all I want to learn. I want to be a doctor, and my dream is to build a hospital so that no mother will ever lose her baby. To me, losing a baby means losing hope for the future. But I believe there will be an incredible tomorrow for Afghanistan. A day that every Afghan could go to school with hope and not fear.
I hope now you see why I believe in Afghanistan's future. 14 years ago, when the Taliban were overthrown, several hundred girls attended school in Afghanistan. Today, that number is nearly 4 million. 14 years ago, I was sneaking into someone's living room to study. But today, I'm working to create a world-class boarding school for Afghan girls. 14 years ago, an Afghan girl wasn't allowed to dream of being someone other than some man's wife. But today, girls like Uzma have grand visions to create real change in Afghanistan. However, these gains are fragile and not enough. More girls need access to school, and many more need opportunities to stay in school beyond primary education. Afghanistan is still an infant democracy facing great challenges. But that makes our work even more urgent. This is my 5-month-old niece, Haska. My ambition is that she will grow up in an Afghanistan that is committed to educating all its daughters. And that is the future that Uzma and I are working towards. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shabana and Uzma, for your incredible story. These, as you can see, are all such incredibly inspiring stories. And we're hearing so many of these stories for the first time because of a new thing called social media. 20 years ago, in many communities across the world, women and girls were often virtually silenced with no outlet and no resources to raise their voices and with it themselves. And that's huge. I mean, think about that. 1 out of every 2 people, 50% of the world's population without a voice. Social media is a new tool to amplify our voices. No matter which platform you prefer, social media has given us all an extraordinary new world where anyone, no matter their gender, can share their story across communities, continents, and computer screens. A whole new world without ceilings. So we encourage you today, both in this room and tuning in via live stream, to engage in this world and to use social media to amplify your voice. So now, I don't want you to forget that we have a hashtag, #NoCeilings. So I'm going to show you how it's done. You take a picture with the hashtag like this. And then you edit it so you look really good. And then you tweet, Facebook, Instagram it. And this crowd just looks too good to not take a picture with. If everybody could join and on the count of 3 say #NoCeilings, okay? 1, 2, 3. #NoCeilings. Chelsea, we need you up here. What are you doing in the audience?
I wanted to be in your picture. And I wanted to make sure that you got all these awesome girls around me in your picture. Did you?
Yep, they're there.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm gonna go tweet it.
Okay.
Okay.
I am, so all of these awesome girls who are still taking pictures, just following America's direction. I think following America's direction is a good rule in life. The young women I'm sitting with are part of an extraordinary group called Girls Who Code, a national nonprofit. You can cheer for yourselves, absolutely. And others can cheer for you as well. Girls Who Code is a national nonprofit that's working to close the gender gap in technology and engineering and computer science by educating and empowering high school girls with skills to pursue careers in technology, engineering, computer science, and related fields. Together, they're creating and designing and building all kinds of platforms that are doing exactly what America talked about, enabling girls to amplify their voices and ensuring that everyone can be heard. Unfortunately, the fact that these young women have the support and the encouragement that they need is just far too uncommon. Far too uncommon here in the United States, and rarer still in many places across the world. For some girls, the odds of pursuing an education at all are made that much more challenging when they are forced to make the drastic and dramatic and often inevitable transition from middle schooler to wife. Child marriage is one of the most significant barriers to girls' full participation in the world today. It takes men and boys, as well as women and girls, to change perceptions and social and cultural norms. Together, Usha Chowdhury and Yogesh Vaishnav are leading the way. Please join me in welcoming Usha and Yogesh to the stage.
Namaste. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
My name is Usha, and I am from Rajasthan, India. I will never forget the summer day my life changed forever. I was playing with my brother and sister in my grandparents' front yard. A car pulled up, and my aunt, uncle, and others stepped out. I did not seem unusual, so we kept playing. But soon they called me in, changed my dress, brushed my hair, and presented me to the guests. They began giving me gifts, gold rings, bracelets, other jewelry, and sari. Then they put sindoor on my forehead. Sindoor is the red powder used Hindu women to signify that they are married. When I realized that I had just been engaged to be married, I began to cry. I was just 14 years old. My mother had been child bride. Growing up, I witnessed the violence she suffered at the hands of my alcoholic father. But lacking an education, my mother felt she had no choice to stay in an abusive marriage. I wanted to follow a different path. Yes, it was my mother who said that marrying a man 10 years old, my senior, was the best choice for me and my sibling. I refused. My family ignored my tears. They thought that I would be changed my mind in a few days. But I did not. For 2 years, I suffered beating and abuse. Then fate stepped in, both families broke off the engagement. I made the most of this chance and went after the education that could improve my life. To support myself, I started teaching nursery school in the morning and attended my own classes in the afternoon. I completed my education, eventually earning a graduate degree in development. Today, I work with the NGO, Vikalp, to help more girls believe in themselves and gain the tools they need to shape their own lives. The work that we do at Vikalp, changing hearts and minds, people to give up centuries-old ideas about gender roles, cannot be the work of women alone. We need men and boys to join this effort. So I invite my colleague Yogeshi to share his experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. 10 years ago, I joined Friends in Voluntary with young people in Rajasthan. We talked with them about ways to overcome barriers keeping them from leading better lives. Slowly, we began to see that we were making a difference, whether by helping a girl to avoid child marriage or convincing a young man that striking a woman was never justified. What started as a temporary voluntary activity became a life work for me, for Usha, and for many of my friends. We formed an NGO called Vikalp Sansthan. The word Vikalp means alternative. Our mission is to persuade young people to establish an alternative community built on gender equality, where every girl and woman is free from all violence, can stay in school and achieve her dreams. Vikalp focus on grassroots. We engage villagers, all walks of life, whether it is priest, elder, police, government official, in dialogue about gender equality. After identifying those who seems most receptive of women's rights, we then educate them about the benefits of the girl, education, and the harmful consequences of child marriage, and encourage them to become a change agent. We took with girls who are at of child marriage risk. In addition to counseling, we use tools such as sports team to help girls gain greater self-confidence. We focus on young men, helping them understand their stake in gender equality, whether it is high family income, healthier children, or stronger local economies. If we are going to have a society truly free from violence, then we must have men and boys standing up and saying no to child marriage, no to harassment, no to sex-selective abortion, no to domestic or sexual violence. Women should not have to raise these issues alone. It affects everybody's life. Whenever I get discouraged, I think about the transformations we have had the privilege to witness. In 10 years, Vikalp has helped more than 875 girls avoid early marriages. I have seen shy and depressed school dropout become completely a different people. With Vikalp help, they find the courage to go back to school and to mobilize other girls to change their lives. These girls truly give me the energy to continue my work. Thank you.
Please welcome back to the stage Secretary Clinton, and with her Cheryl Wu-Dunn and Debbie Sterling.
Wow, those were such great stories. And I want to thank Yusha and Yogesh and Shabana and Uzma for coming here and making the data come alive for all of us. As you've heard, we have made important progress, increasing educational opportunities and participation for women and girls over the past 2 decades. We have nearly eliminated the global gender gap in primary education so that girls are attending school at virtually the same rate as boys. More than 9 out of 10 countries also have been able to make primary education tuition-free. But despite these gains, there is still a lot of unfinished business. While more girls than ever are making the transition from primary to secondary school, in some regions, the gender gap remains stubbornly wide. Less than 1/3 of girls in sub-Saharan Africa and fewer than half in South Asia are enrolled in secondary school. And we know that continuing in school can help an adolescent girl avoid so many threats to her safe transition to adulthood. Threats like child marriage, early childbirth, HIV, intractable poverty. So this gap is a serious challenge, not just for those girls who are denied the chance to learn, but for their families, societies, and economies that are also held back. I have 2 people here who know a lot about this and have both studied it and lived it. And I'd like to begin with Cheryl Wu-Dunn, a journalist, co-author of the best-selling books Half the Sky and A Path Appears, which have inspired so many people, including myself, around the world. Cheryl, can you share with us what you have found in your research about the barriers to girls attending secondary schools and what we can do to try to overcome them?
I think one way to really think about it is that here in the US, we structure our lives around jobs and schools, and for kids around schools. In a lot of the developing world, school is, in many places, an afterthought. And there are so many barriers in society, in the culture, that actually prevent them from going to school. So for instance, fees for tuition and uniforms. Most schools require girls to wear uniforms. And then also travel. Travel to and from school is often far and dangerous. There's a lot of crime along the way. And then also, this is something we don't have here, water fetching duties. So often girls, if water is an hour away, they have to go fetch the water and come back. That makes them late to school, or they miss school at all. And if they start getting to school late, they fall behind, and then it's just much easier to drop out. So one of the solutions that really helps, that I found, is a comprehensive solution. You really need to get at so many aspects of the school experience and also just the logistics of the school experience. One example is a K-12 school in Haiti that I went to called Sopudep. We were filming the PBS documentary, Path Appears, there, and I met this woman named Sol Diaz. She's amazing. She's the founder of the school. She actually converted a police torture chamber into her school with generous help from foreign donors. She gives financial aid, and a lot of that aid is very helpful, but she also makes the families pay what they can because she wants them to be invested in it. She has strong academics, but she also has vocational training. So she teaches them electronics, carpentry, and tailoring. And she also teaches social justice. She actually has the kids help the elderly. She has them deliver school lunches to other kids. But one of the key components of SOPUDEP is that she pays the teachers regularly, and she also gives hot lunches. And in this school, of course, it's probably the best meal of the day for the girls, and in many parts of the world, lunches at school are sometimes the only meal that those kids get. So may there be more SOPUDEPs around the world.
Oh, Cheryl, thank you. And we go from the problem of girls not having the opportunity to attend and to finish secondary school to another gap that we see in education. Too few girls are pursuing studies in science, technology, engineering, and math, the so-called STEM fields. And that's not true only around the world. That's true right here in the United States. Now, many factors contribute, from persistent gender stereotypes to cultural barriers to poor quality education. So closing this gap is crucial, not just for our daughters, but for our economy as a whole, because we're leaving a lot of talent on the sidelines instead of letting it drive innovation and growth. Jobs in STEM fields are projected to grow significantly in the future, and they tend to pay better than other jobs. Women in STEM earn on average 33% more than their counterparts in other fields with comparable education. So this is an economic imperative, and at the Clinton Foundation, we're working with partners to recruit more STEM teachers, and we've organized a series of codeathons, the Girls Who Code and others, to bring together young women software engineers to collaborate on the apps that promote women's health and wellness while also building a new professional network for themselves. Now I'd like for you to meet someone who knows a lot about this, Debbie Sterling, founder of the educational toy company Goldie Blocks, and I wanted to ask you to share your insights into what all of us can do to help increase the number of girls entering STEM fields.
We have to start early. I remember the first time I heard the word engineering. I was a senior in high school. My math teacher pulled me aside and she said she thought I'd be good at it. I didn't know what it was. I pictured an old man driving a train. And it sounds so simple, but I'm telling you, I think that this misunderstanding of engineering and STEM persists amongst girls around the world. The thing is that we have a really leaky pipeline, and girls start losing interest in science and math at a really young age. They're just as capable as boys, but they're not as interested and they're not as confident. By the time they hit middle school, that interest level really plummets. We've got to get in there. I was one of very few women who studied engineering at Stanford, and it really bothered me being a minority. After I graduated, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to do something about this. And my idea was to create engineering toys for girls. When I started, I did all this research, so how would you get girls to like engineering? How could we make it fun, make it playful, get them engaged? And this interesting thing came out of my research, where girls really loved stories and characters. Instead of just building for the sake of building, they wanted to know why. What are we building? Who's it for? Who's it going to help? So I came up with this storybook and construction building set combined as a way to engage girls in STEM. When I first launched my company, people in the toy industry thought I was crazy. They said boys like building and girls like dolls, that you can't fight nature. But I'm really proud to say over the last 3 years that I've entirely proved them wrong because girls do. Because it's true, girls really do love it when it's presented in a way that's not intimidating, that's appealing, that shows that engineering and technology can be a great creative outlet for them. One of the most fascinating things I've learned in my job with girls is how much they really want to help people. They really want to solve problems, and they really want to make the world a better place. And the thing is, engineering and technology can enable them to do that. We just need to show them how.
Wow, that's a great challenge to all of us. And I think what you've heard from our two guests, the idea of a comprehensive school that really meets the needs of young people, particularly young girls, hot meals to other kinds of instruction and discipline to breaking down the stereotypes, making it possible for girls to feel that there's a place for them in engineering and technology, rather than remaining an enormous untapped resource. And that's in everyone's interest, to find ways to unlock the potential of these extraordinary young women and girls in Haiti and those here in our country and across the world. So we want to really challenge all of you because we've made real progress, but look at the data, understand how much more there is to do, that we're not there yet. And please join me in thanking Cheryl and Debbie for sharing their insights with us. Thank you. From education to the economy.
Thank you, Mom. But on a more somber note, gaps in progress for women and girls are particularly wide in terms of economic participation. Globally, over the last 2 decades, women's economic participation has failed to flourish. Indeed, it's at a standstill. Globally, labor force participation rates for women have not increased in the last 20 years. In fact, they actually dropped from 57 to 55% before stagnating. Women around the world are still denied equal pay for equal work everywhere, earning less than their male colleagues in almost every profession. The barriers that exist, despite overwhelming evidence that economies and GDPs grow when women and girls are empowered to participate, are some of the most strident that we confront across the world. Yet, in spite of these challenges, every year, millions and millions of women everywhere are empowering themselves and their communities by finding unique, dynamic, and productive ways to enter the workforce, start their own businesses, and contribute to their economies and their countries. Women like the inspiring innovator and chocolatier, and I love chocolate, so I'm particularly thrilled she's chosen to participate in our world in this way, Daryl Estrada Saunders. And so to hear Daryl's story is to show what all of us can do when we empower women to live their dreams. Please join me in welcoming Daryl to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, good day. My name is Daryl Estrada Saunders, and I'm from the beautiful island of Trinidad and Tobago. When you think of my country, you might think of sun and beaches, or perhaps our top export, oil and gas. But did you know that Trinidad is also the home of the world's best and finest tasting cocoa? Well, if I have anything to do with it, pretty soon, when the world thinks of Trinidad, they may think of my delicious chocolate. I grew up on a cocoa farm, helping my father and 4 brothers harvest, dry, and polish beans in our backyard. But my dearest memories are the times we spent drinking hot chocolate brewed from the beans grown on our farm, according to traditional recipes. I left the farm to attend university in Venezuela, and when I graduated, I got a job as a quarantine officer. I was a single mother, so a government job was a stable means to support my 2 daughters. But I always had a dream of starting my business and becoming my own boss. At the airport, I would watch tourists go to souvenir shops looking for special gifts to take back home, but always had to settle for a Trinidad and Tobago trinket that had been made in China. I remember the spiced chocolate from my childhood and had thought, this might do well with the tourists. No one else was selling or making it. My brothers were doubtful, but I decided to give it a try. In my little kitchen, I started grinding up cocoa beans with a mortar and pestle and combining them with the herbs and spices according to my grandmother's recipe. I took a batch of 30 pieces to the airport shop. They agreed to sell them, and within a week, all the chocolates were sold. That was 8 years ago. Today, my company, Exotic Caribbean Mountain Pride, has expanded beyond my own kitchen into my backyard. I've traded the mortar and pestle for an electric mill and a dough mixer and hired several people to help me. I have dreams of growing my business, of selling my chocolates internationally, of automating production, and of opening a chocolate cafe. But what small entrepreneurs like myself need most to get to the next level is training. I was fortunate to have participated in We Americas, a US-supported women's entrepreneurship program created by Mrs. Hilton during her time as Secretary of State, and have attended training sponsored by Vital Voices last year. I hope that even more of my sister entrepreneurs can enjoy similar opportunities so that they too can expand their businesses and build their countries. They say life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. 8 years after those first 30 chocolates, I marvel at the opportunities that are opening up to me. Today, I sell about 30,000 pieces of chocolate a year. You can find my chocolates in every supermarket, farmers market, and souvenir shops on the island. We've even added new flavors of drinking chocolate. And there's even more in our product line. Cocoa butter, dark chocolate, bonbon fills with different kinds of traditional sweets, liqueurs, cocoa nibs, ice creams, etc. So I invite you to taste the richness, the history, and the sweetness of Trinidad in my chocolates. I hope that you will be finding these chocolates in your own supermarket in the not too distant future. Thank you very much. I have yours too.
Thank you. Thank you, Daryl. Now please welcome again to the stage Melinda Gates, accompanied by Lisa Sue and Nellie Galan.
Well, that was an incredible story that Daryl shared with us. She's an amazing businesswoman. You can see why we all find her so inspiring. And so I think the question before us now, and the question that's raised in this report, is how can we help grow more entrepreneurs like Daryl so other women can start their own businesses? You know, how do we assure that they can contribute their talents to society, both in their local communities and in the global economy, whether these women are entrepreneurs, farmers, employees, or executives? And this is not just important for women, but it's also vitally important for families and for our global growth and prosperity. We know that when women have income in their hands, they more often invest it in their families. They invest it in things like healthcare, school fees, and in their children. It makes a huge difference for their family and for the future of their children. So in short, I like to think of it this way. When you invest in a woman, you're investing in everyone else. And on a macroeconomic level, studies have shown that if we can choose and put women and close that labor force participation gap between men and women and choose to put women forward, then economies will grow. So across high-income countries, closing this GDP gap, closing this gap between men and women could lead to GDP growth of about 12% between now and 2030. And in countries like Japan and Italy, if you put women in the labor force, you can actually grow their GDP by about 20%. So to do this, though, there are still many challenges in front of us. In more than 150 countries, women lack basic things, basic protections that are critical to economic participation. For instance, I meet women who don't have the legal right to own their own property, much less take out a loan. So women everywhere are still denied equal pay for equal work. That's another huge gap that exists for women. And as Daryl mentioned, so many of these women lack the training to take their small business to the next level. Now, Nellie, I understand that that's part of what you do, is making sure that women entrepreneurs get trained. Can you tell us a little bit about how you do that?
You know, Melinda, training to me is essential in this process, right? And I founded something called the Adelante movement because we found out that, like Chelsea said before, sometimes in a first world country like the United States, we don't see that there are emerging markets under our nose. And in this country, the emerging market are Latinas. Latinas are the fastest growing entrepreneurs in this country, and yet, like America said earlier, we don't see women like you, like me, we don't see women like us in our community. And so we decided to found the Adelante movement, and I love the word Adelante because it means Adelante, let's get going, let's go. Can we all say it? Adelante. I love that word. And we really have kind of created a community with these Latinas by going on tour, going city by city, and bringing women of substance that are Latinas so they can meet them, and then giving them meat and potatoes training, because we want them to really understand basic business training, what's going on with the digital world, what's going on with social media. They've become masters at social media, and we're showing them how to start a business in every home online and engage the whole family, because as you said, women bring money back to the home. We also have to do this under a cultural context, because we have issues with, women not wanting to do better than their husbands or their fathers, and we have to explain to the men that the women are going to bring the money home. So it's been an incredible, incredible journey. Now, how did we do this? Because we can't do it alone, right? So how do we create a private sector solution to this challenge? Well, we've partnered with 44 Hispanic NGOs because we want to bring light to the work that's being done by all these NGOs around the country and work together. We've worked with government agencies like the SBA because Latinas don't even know where the money is. There's money out there and they don't even know where to go and apply for it. And I've also been blessed because I saw what Coca-Cola was doing with 5x20 global initiative around the world, and I saw that women around the world had very similar problems to Latinas in America, and I've been lucky to be supported by them to sort of follow some of the information that they already had and apply it in the US. So it's been incredible, and our goal is to train as many Latinas as we can to be entrepreneurs and to start a business in every Latino family's house.
Oh, that's fantastic, Nelly. Well, you could see her excitement for this.
I'm excited. Adelante.
So, entrepreneurship is really vital for women. It's vital to their economic participation, but it's also their ability to advance into leadership roles into corporations. And corporations play such a big role in the global economy. Now, today, I think most of you know in this room that 5% of CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies are women. And that is improvement from 20 years ago, but my husband would call it starting at a low base when you start at zero. So to me, it's still far from where we need to be. We're lucky enough today, though, that Lisa Su would join us. She is the only CEO of an American semiconductor company ever. And Lisa, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how we can make it less lonely at the top for other women like you.
Thank you, Melinda. It's really such an honor to be here amongst this incredible group of leaders. 5% women leading Fortune 500 companies in 20 years. I'm truly amazed by that number. I can say that is definitely progress, right? We're engineers, so we like to see progress, but I can also say we have so much more opportunity. And just to tell you a little bit about my story, I was born in Taiwan, and I immigrated to the United States when I was 2 with my parents. And I wish I had Debbie Sterling's toys when I was growing up. But I became an engineer because I really like to build things, and I know that you share that as well. Engineering is one of those great professions because it is kind of very black and white. Either the product works or it doesn't work, and you can see the product of that labor. I loved building products and bringing teams together, and through that and a lot of support and membership, I came along the way. 5 months ago, I became the CEO of AMD. As CEO of AMD, I'm leading a company with a 45-year-old heritage of bringing leading technology into the industry. I really do believe, though, and I know you share this, over the next 10 years, we're going to see tremendous innovation in technology, which will change the way our daily lives, just like social media and smartphones change the way we live today. And what you really realize about innovation is it really only happens when you bring people together with different backgrounds and different experiences who can really solve problems together. Innovation will be much, much better when we can have a more diverse workforce, particularly in both the engineering as well as in the leadership community. We heard earlier that in the last 20 years, today's No Ceilings report reflects that we have made progress in primary education. We've even made progress in universities. However, we still have a long ways to go in engineering and corporate leadership, and we can and should close this gap. So when I look at it, I say what's good for innovation is also good for business. So how can we do this? It really starts with doing it together. Fostering an environment like in entrepreneurship where women can grow and flourish. And when we see more men and women CEOs talking actively about promoting diversity and gender equality, we know that this can change. So my hope for the next 20 years from now we won't be talking about how many women CEOs are in the Fortune 500, because it won't matter. It will be natural for corporate leadership to reflect the most talented individuals.
Well, thanks to you both. Thanks, Nellie. Thanks, Lisa, for your participation and also the comments about business and how we move women forward in the economy. It's really important. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for teaching me a new word, adelante. I will definitely work that into my, daily vocabulary. While so much of the no ceilings data does tell a story, sometimes it's the data that's not there that speaks the loudest. Today, and even more so in the future, climate change and environmental security present an urgent global challenge that we cannot ignore. And yet we have shockingly little data about the ways in which women and girls are affected by climate change and what they're doing to ameliorate climate change and empower themselves over the consequences of climate change in their own communities. And we all know that if we're going to find sustainable solutions for our world, we cannot afford to shut out half of our global brain power, tenacity, passion, and perseverance. One leader who is ensuring that her brain power and passion are included in and driving this work is the incomparable Wanjira Matai. Please join me in welcoming Wanjira to the stage.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much. Nearly 40 years ago, women in the Kenyan countryside reported that their streams were drying up, their crops were failing, and they had to walk farther and farther away to gather firewood for fuel, building, and fencing. Deforestation, in short, was threatening their very livelihoods. The women knew that something had to be done. My mother, Wangari Maathai, had an insight. She saw that women themselves could be the solution to environmental degradation. She started a project offering stipends to women to work together, plant seedlings, plant trees, trees that would then bind the soil, store rainwater, and provide food and firewood. That project became known as the Greenbelt Movement and earned my mother in 2004 the Nobel Peace Prize. Adelante. And that has led to not just the planting of some 51 million trees and the restoration of rivers, watersheds, and landscapes across the country, but also to the transformation of lives of nearly 1 million women, their families, to protect the natural environment, stand up for their rights, and protect the commons. Women like Naomi Kabura from Mirisho, before joining the movement, had no income of her own. She had to rely on her husband for everything. But by working with women in the movement, planting trees on public lands, she began to earn a living, money of her own. And she was inspired to plant more and more trees on her land. The wood from those trees she planted also enabled her to send her children to school, build her own home, and provide her sons with wood for their first houses when they got married. Today, the fight against deforestation and degradation continues. Women are still at the forefront of this fight. I'm proud to carry out my mother's work as the chair of the Greenbelt Movement today, and also the director of W Power, the Partnerships for Women Entrepreneurs in Renewable Energy, a program that is at the Wangari Maathai Institute at the University of Nairobi. Today, even as we continue our tree planting efforts, we're opening a new front. We have opened the adoption of renewable energy technologies, such as clean cook stoves, solar technologies, and bamboo biomass. Today, millions of women across the world still cook on open fires, a practice that today pollutes the air they breathe and the air their children breathe, and causes an enormous 4 million deaths a year. But cleaner cooking technologies and lighting technologies exist. The challenge is to get these technologies to the women who need them and to make available the necessary financing to make it possible for them to own them. In January 2013, on Secretary Clinton's last day in office, I was proud to join her at the announcement of the formation of the W-Power Partnership. This is a collaboration between the US State Department, the Wangari Maathai Institute, to empower more than 8,000 women clean energy entrepreneurs across East Africa, Nigeria, and India to deliver clean energy access. With organizations such as the Greenbelt Movement, the MacArthur Foundation, CARE International, Solar Sisters, SSP India, and the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves, we aim to bring clean technologies to some 3.5 million households in the next 2 years. There is an African proverb that says, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. We cannot change the missed opportunities of the past, but we can indeed plan for the future. With women in the lead, I know we can succeed in helping the next generation live the very best versions of themselves in a safer, cleaner, and more peaceful world. Thank you.
Thank you again, Wanjira. Please welcome again to the stage my mother, Secretary Clinton, joined by President Mary Robinson and Marcela Tovar Restrepo.
Well, we're delighted to be discussing this particular set of issues because today's discussion has been all about data and how it helps us understand the gains we've made and the gaps that remain. And when it comes to areas like health and education, we have enough data to paint a rich picture of the challenges and opportunities ahead. But one area where we don't have as much as I wish we did, and therefore don't have the kind of clarity we need to make the case, is the relationship between women and the environment. There is still very little sex disaggregated data out there about these sets of issues. And that's a problem because the impacts of climate change and other environmental challenges are already shaping the lives of women and girls around the world. In some cases, women are likely to be disproportionately affected. Women represent a significant percentage of the world's small farmers who are trying to eke out a living in the face of droughts and heat waves. As resources become scarcer, populations are displaced, and severe weather events become more frequent. Women are therefore on the front lines of climate change. And it's important to remember that women are not just victims. They are agents of change and drivers of progress. We saw that with the success of the Greenbelt movement a generation ago, and we're seeing it again today, including in the global effort to transition to cleaner, safer, more efficient cook stoves. Now, Mary Robinson, who has a lifetime of advocacy on behalf of so many of the most important human rights issues, she and her foundation have been tireless in efforts to ensure that the voices of women and other marginalized people are heard and their interests are protected in the international efforts to address climate change. Mary, tell us a little bit more about climate justice and what we can all do to help you mobilize women to join in your efforts.
Well, thank you, and it really is great to be here. Climate justice, the work of my foundation, I think really captures both sides of the moral argument to act on climate change, to help those who suffer most from a changing climate but are least responsible, while also ensuring that they don't suffer again as the world takes action on climate change. We work to enable women to participate in decision-making processes related to climate change across all levels, local, national, and international. It's critical that the voices of grassroots women are heard and amplified so that they are part of the planning, the design, and the implementation of policies that impact on their lives. 2 weeks ago, my foundation organized a roundtable on women's participation, learning from experience and from community experiences in Santiago, Chile. The roundtable brought together grassroots women dealing with the impacts of climate change, local and national government representatives from Chile, and high-level women, including Milan Verveer, who you know well, and we were listening to those women. The meeting reminded me again how organizing women to deal with climate change could in itself be empowering for women. There was a small farmer there who had struggled through 2 years of severe drought and had decided to first run for local office so that she could help develop solutions to her community's predicament. There was also a young woman, a 24-year-old mother, who belonged to a women's organization, and it was just incredible to see the difference it made to her. By working in this effort, she had learned to use accountancy software, she had learned to really develop her skills, and she was now inspired to get into business, to get into honey making, cheese, and other products. And it had just changed her life. As we know, it's very inspiring. So I'm inspired by the great potential for the women's leadership in climate change fight. I have said before, it is the greatest human rights issue facing our world because it's an existential issue. And women change behavior. We have to be there in the forefront.
Amen, amen. I'd now like to ask Dr. Marcela Tovar-Restrepo, the board chair of the Women's Environment and Development Organization, to tell us more about the research that does exist on women and climate. I know you've brought some of your students here with you today, and how women can help lead the charge to reverse climate change and environmental degradation.
Absolutely. As you have said, climate change is one of the most urgent challenges of our time. And we know that it impacts differently men and women, exacerbating all the existing gender inequalities that we have seen. So today we know that climate extremes disproportionately impact women. So in our research, we have been actually putting forward grassroots women's organizations to work and participate in decision-making instances. In my organization, WIDO, is training women on the implementation of local clean energy systems. And we trust that those local initiatives will achieve global impact. As we heard from Wanjira, we have learned that the Greenbelt movement reached global and created global change. So we trust that women's capacity to act, to speak, to innovate, and to lead is the key to prevent more environmental degradation. So this is a great time to reach out and energize grassroots women's organizations, because in that way we're going to ensure that we have a healthy and peaceful planet for all.
Well, I really thank you for making that point and joining with Mary. Climate change can seem like this great big abstract global issue, and that's why we want to follow the leads of our two advocates and experts here today, try to bring it down to everyday concerns so that more people can understand what's at stake and they can look for solutions like the Greenbelt movement and so much else. So there's a lot ahead of us still. Yes. And Mary and Marcel, thank you both for joining us and for what you do every single day. We're now going from the impacts of climate change and the necessity of addressing it to a related set of issues, peace and security, because as Mary Robinson said, we're going to have less peace and more insecurity, in part because of what's happening in the climate and the impact that's having on people's lives. Okay.
Another area where we have seen strikingly little progress and improvement in the past 20 years for women and girls is in peace and security. Freedom from violence is as fundamental a human right as any, as essential to individual well-being as it is to our collective progress. And yet, in no country in the world have we guaranteed that right for women and girls. Transcending geographic borders, economic and social class, religion, race, ethnicity, gender-based violence is truly a global epidemic that affects women and girls in every country, in every society across the world, including here in our own in the United States. Worldwide, nearly 1 in 3 women have suffered some form of physical or sexual violence or abuse, often at the hands of their husband or intimate partner. In conflict and post-conflict zones, women are particularly vulnerable. And yet, despite these uncontested facts, women are typically missing from the very conversations and the very work around peace and security that could and should help keep women and girls safe. In fact, only 16% of the 585 peace deals across the world between 1990 and 2010 referenced women. Even fewer included women. For Ikram bin Said, making sure that women's voices are an equal part of such conversations is a matter of both personal and national security, of personal healing and national rebuilding and growth. Please join me in welcoming Ikram bin Said.
Thank you. 4 years ago, on a rainy Tuesday in December, I stood before a room full of students, and instead of beginning a planned lecture on marketing, I told them, I should not be here. Today, I have to be on the street. I walked out. I was shaking with fear, but I felt an inner courage that I had not known before. I also felt in love, like I was going on a date. Actually, it was a date with my country, Tunisia, the country that I had lost to dictatorship for more than 23 years. I joined the crowd in front of the National Labor Union, which was surrounded by the police. The rain was falling around us as we sang the national anthem. If the people want to live, destiny must obey. Never before had its word felt more true, more possible. A few weeks later, I was again on the streets of Tunis with my fellow citizens. My mother, who was watching on TV, called me. Come home, Ikram. The police will kill you. But my sister grabbed the phone from her and said, please stay. Stay there for me, for you, for our generation. I faced the choice between my personal security and hope, and I chose hope. That day, January 14, 2011, dictatorship came to an end in Tunisia, and our dreams came back. But the next day, it was time to get to work, time to make real the promise of January 14, and time to ensure that the women who bravely risked their lives alongside their fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons on the streets of Tunisia would move forward and not backward in the newly democratic Tunisia. I launched Aswat Nisa, Voices of Women, the first and only women's organization in Tunisia that brings together women and men from all walks of life and political beliefs, from left to right, secular to Islamist, to advance and protect the rights of all women. The challenges facing us are many. Almost 50% of Tunisian women have experienced violence. How can we protect them? Too many women could not vote in the last elections because they liked ID cards. How can we represent them? Women in fields and factories are working for almost nothing under horrifying conditions. How can we help them? In short, how do we convince politicians that women's rights are human rights and that expanding opportunities for women is the right thing and the smart thing for Tunisia? Aswat is fighting help all people understand that Tunisia's successful democratic transition depends on the full participation of women. We must guarantee that women have a seat at every decision-making table, whether the discussion is about education, health, the economy, or national security. Not just because this is good for women, but because democracy requires the wisdom of a diversity of voices and experiences. We know that defending single mothers, supporting women politicians, combating gender-based violence, reforming our educational system to raise the innovative, entrepreneurial, inclusive children who believe in gender equality, these are not side issues, but essential prescriptions for a stronger, smarter, and fairer Tunisia. Throughout its history, Tunisia has been a leader in our region, banning slavery in 1846, outlawing polygamy, guaranteeing women the right to vote in 1946, guaranteeing the right of abortion and withdrawing all the reservation on the CEDAW. Despite the challenges we still face, I am confident that we can build on this progressive achievements and confident that my decision and the decision of thousands of my fellow Tunisians to live our ordinary lives to the streets 4 years ago was not made in vain. I thank you for your support and very much hope that you will continue to join us in our efforts to make history. Thank you.
Thank you, Ikram. And now I am honored to welcome Croatia's first woman president, Her Excellency Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, President of the Republic of Croatia.
Thank you, Chelsea. Ladies and gentlemen, there has never been a better time to be born female. This opening statement from the report that we're presenting today did not ring true when I was born. My father wanted a son, an heir, but the disadvantages that I was born with turned out to have opened a world of possibilities to me. Instead of inheriting his business, I was free to choose my own path in life. It also gave me an opportunity to achieve my first victory in fighting for gender equality, developing a loving relationship with my father and turning him into one of the staunchest supporters of my work. In order to achieve success in our endeavors, we need to fully include men in this process. Unfortunately, when it comes to women, peace, and security, there are many places in the world where it's still not a good time to be born female, where the life of a woman is worth less than that of a goat. Thus, I thank the Clinton and Gates Foundations for their initiative and for having invited me to participate in this important event. Throughout my career, I have also always wholeheartedly advocated the advancement of the women, peace, and security agenda. I have seen the brutal faces of war in my native Croatia and in Afghanistan. I have been through a reconciliation process, and I strongly believe that for peace and security to be sustained, women must be empowered, their voices must be heard, and their participation in the peace process must be guaranteed. This is key to success. We have come quite far in implementing the Security Council Resolution 1325. I pride myself in having worked together with Secretary Clinton, Melania, and others to include it in NATO's Chicago Summit Declaration and to set up a permanent post of Secretary General Special Representative for Women, Peace, and Security. However, although there is a growing recognition of the role of women as peacemakers, there continue to be poorly represented in peace processes. During my career, I have met many women in conflict and post-conflict countries and was deeply impressed by their courage and determination. The women of Afghanistan are especially close to my heart. It is always so inspiring and so encouraging to talk to them. They are so passionate to move their country forward, to make it a safe place and to rebuild their communities. A former commander told me once that he asked a prominent Afghan woman, an advocate of human rights, what our biggest achievement as international community in Afghanistan was. And her response was, us, women, we are your biggest success. Those women are cornerstones of peace and security. Women like Shabama, whom we've just heard from and whom I met in Afghanistan. During one of my visits to the country back in 2013, I visited the School of Leadership in Kabul. The girls and young women I met there, girls like Uzma, impressed me with their enthusiasm, focus, and self-confidence. It wouldn't surprise me if one of those girls became a future president of Afghanistan. I want to believe this can happen. We in Croatia know from our own experience how war can affect women and girls. We have seen the impact of the violence of human rights on the lives of women and their physical and mental health. Many women in Croatia were victims of maltreatment, torture, humiliation, and rape that was used as a method of intimidation and terror. Women from Croatia and Bosnia and Herzegovina played a vital role in ensuring that rape in conflict be treated as a war crime. But today, years after the war, many of them have not healed yet, and many of them are still waiting for justice. I firmly believe that time and again, we have to raise our voice against sexual violence, and that we can and must do more to prevent and address sexual violence in conflict. However, thank you. However, women are too often viewed only as victims of conflict. Today, I would like to stress here once again the potential of women as indispensable agents of peace. How do we then proceed in promoting our joint vision? Certainly involve more women in peacekeeping operations. Include women in peace negotiation processes. Develop gender-sensitive policies. Promote political and civic participation of women. And one crucial element, promote education as one of the most important tools in supporting our advocacy efforts, educating both women and men. Ladies and gentlemen, it should be clear that no country, no nation, no region can prosper if the rights of women, who make half the world's population, are denied. It should be clear that without the participation of half of the world's population, we cannot achieve full and complete results. So let us continue our efforts to fight discrimination, to fight for equal rights and opportunities for women around the world. I, for my part, wish to express my full intent to continue breaking ceilings in our joint effort to achieve that there are none. And finally, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Secretary Clinton and Ambassador Vivier for their dedicated work on advancing the status of women around the world. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Clinton and Ambassador Vivier to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh,
That was wonderful.
That was absolutely amazing. Madam President, we're so happy you can be here with us. We've had the opportunity to work together in the past, and I'm thrilled that you're now leading your country. I've really been encouraged by the progress that has been made in raising awareness in the international community about the importance of integrating women into efforts to make peace and keep peace around the world. As you know so well, the UN Security Council adopted the first resolution on women, peace, and security, Resolution 1325, back in 2000, and has since adopted 6 additional resolutions. Governments, including our own, under Ambassador Reviere's leadership, have formulated national plans on how to actually implement the requirements of integrating women into peace and security issues. This was a very important priority for me when I was Secretary of State. So there's a growing international momentum to advance women's inclusion in peace negotiations and conflict prevention, to protect women from sexual and gender-based violence, and to ensure equal access to relief and recovery assistance in areas of conflict and insecurity. Nevertheless, we know that's going to be a challenge for us to achieve. Right now, women make up fewer than 1 in 10 peace negotiators in all the conflicts that you know are happening around the world. And women are still highly vulnerable to sexual and gender-based violence, especially in conflict zones. And we don't have enough women in the ranks of the peacekeepers. So we've got a long way to go to get to this goal of integration into the daily work of security and peace building. Now, the president, as the first woman leader of a country that emerged from war less than a generation ago and now participates in UN peacekeeping efforts, and also she was a former member of the NATO leadership, I wanted to ask you for additional thoughts to your very eloquent remarks about how do we ensure more women are participating more fully in peace and security efforts around the world.
Well, I mentioned a number of measures that we can and must start taking when it comes to peacekeeping and peacemaking operations. But to be a little bit more concrete, a little bit more specific, first we have to work on prevention. Prevention, especially of sexual violence and other violence against women and children in conflict. However, as I pointed out today, they are not just victims. They should be agents of change. They should be participating actively, not just in negotiations, but in the reconciliation process, and they should be bringing a lot more to their own communities. When I was foreign minister, education, I mentioned, is one of the primary elements that we have to keep in mind, both of men and women. So I used to bring to Croatia women from Iraq and from Afghanistan to meet women from Croatia in the areas that are affected by conflict, to learn from them what the reconciliation process was like, and first and foremost, how to push their own roles in that kind of reconciliation process. I used to bring them to our diplomatic academy as well. And when at NATO, I also insisted that our commanders in Afghanistan at ISAF have roundtables that included gender issues, both participation of women in the Afghan National Security Forces, to push them to the fore and not keep them back in the offices, to let the women aviators actually fly the aircraft and not just sit in office rooms, but also to talk about the rights of women and how to push for their more active role in the parliament. It's not enough to be a member of parliament. It's not enough to say that there are 25% of women in the Afghan parliament. What is important is that they are on the important committees and that they're given a voice. So we tasked the commanders to have these roundtables that would include both men and women to talk about these specific issues and to help them learn how to carry the process forward.
Well, this is really important because you were in the leadership of NATO and you could make that happen. And you brought a perspective that had not been articulated before. I saw that in action. And I want to thank you because just getting people around the same table, having the commanders listening and understanding women's perspectives was not only the right thing to do, but it was very smart because it assisted in a lot of the operations and efforts that NATO, ISAF, and our partners were engaged in. Now, Milan and I have been working together on these issues for longer than we care to admit. She was the first ever U.S. Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues, and now Milan, yes? Now Milan runs, well, first she created, now she runs the Georgetown Institute for Women, Peace, and Security, which I believe, was the first in the world. Now, others are beginning to follow that lead. But Melinda, you've traveled everywhere. You've been deeply immersed in these issues. Why are we talking about this? Why is it important for women to participate in peacekeeping, in negotiations for long-term stability and security? What evidence supports this? What other data do we need to make the case?
Well, first, let me thank you, Madam Secretary, for all that you've done to bring great leadership to this issue. You mentioned the National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security that the United States finally has. Some 40 other countries have gone ahead of us, as has NATO. But we are there now, and it provides that blueprint so that we will do our diplomatic development and military work hopefully differently, certainly bringing in women's participation and using that lens. But this is an issue that has got us to a place that one can hardly call full participation. We are not there yet. Only about 8% of peace negotiators have been women. Over the decades, we've seen that almost half of the peace agreements that are enacted fail in the first 5 years. They're abrogated. And we've seen that conflicts that are ever present often are recurring conflicts because we've not addressed these issues the right way in the first place. And I so endorse with what Madam President said and the great leadership she has brought to this space, particularly at NATO. But when you said we've got to stop looking at women as victims, that is so true. And I still remember so vividly one night in Kabul, Afghanistan, when a woman said to me in the course of a discussion, she started her remarks by saying, "Stop looking at us as victims and look at us as the leaders that we are." And it is so true, because if we only look at women as victims, we don't see them as participants. We don't see their wealth of experience they bring. We don't see the ground truth that they have to really make a difference. And that is so important. And just last year, for the first time, after 30 years of conflict between the Philippine government and the rebels in Mindanao, they came to a table. And it was a woman who led the governmental team of negotiators. And they were able to broker a truce and hopefully create a blueprint that others can model on that effort. So we do have evidence. We need more qualitative evidence, but we know from the peace processes that have occurred from Liberia, and it's wonderful to have the president of Liberia with us, because it was her market women that made such a difference in bringing the peace finally to Liberia after that long civil war. But from Liberia to so many other places, Northern Ireland, you heard from Ikram, what's happened in Tunisia, where the women are really working to create a viable democracy there. We really need to understand what's happened in these places, the qualitative difference that women bring, putting issues on the table that ordinarily wouldn't be there, reconciliation, transitional justice, focus on economics, focus on land rights, land reform, so many issues that have to be addressed if peace is going to be sustainable and if peace is going to be there for the long term, creating a better future for the people. And that's why at Georgetown, we are really working to bring scholars and practitioners together so that we can bolster the evidence that does exist. We're working with the Ford Foundation to gather first-person accounts of the roles women have played in these processes so that we can learn from those experiences, learn the best practices, learn what hasn't worked. But collecting data is only half the story, because DPKO, the Peacekeeping Bureau at the United Nations, does an excellent job collecting statistics and data on the number of female peacekeepers. And the president mentioned the role of women in peacekeeping. But we have to learn from that data, because only 4% of peacekeepers are females today. And so, yes, we need good data, but we have to learn from that data. And it's in all of our interests to follow the great leadership that Madam President and Madam Secretary represent here. Because if we want to see the kind of world that we all do want to see, one that is stable and peaceful and gives people a better chance for a better future, then we really need to do more than we've done so far on this issue.
Well, we're thrilled to have these two women leaders who have helped to pioneer some of the changes that we have briefly addressed today. It is going to take a huge effort on the part of governments, international organizations, particularly militaries, law enforcement, NGOs, other civic groups, to recognize the importance of this issue and then to act on it. And now we're going to hear from a very, very special guest. Chelsea and America, will you introduce that for us?
Well, thank you, Mom. So, America, when you were 17, you were doing what?
Let's just say I wasn't winning a Nobel Prize.
Yeah, I don't think any of us in the audience were. But someone remarkable was. And joining us now by Skype is a young woman who truly needs no introduction, our current Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Malala. Malala, we're so thrilled you could join us today, particularly because we know you stayed late in school, as we can see you sitting in your classroom. So thank you, and thanks to your school for enabling this conversation. And I know that I speak for everyone here and that we're always eager to hear whatever you have to share with us.
First of all, thank you so much. It's a great honor that I'm speaking today and for such an important cause that is women's rights and women's full participation in society and the opportunities for them. So first of all, it's really inspiring that we see wonderful women in the audience here on the stage, you too, and we see prime ministers, presidents, actresses, politicians, so women from every field. And then we see inspiring young girls from Afghanistan, from India, and from many other developing countries who are raising their voices, who are here to say that we speak up for our rights. And it's such an inspiring moment for me. And I'm really honored that I'm speaking here today. And it's important because we are highlighting such an important issue that we are facing since many, many years. And now it's inspiring that women have gathered. They are now together. They want to solve these issues. And we want to make sure that there is equality in society and that every girl and every boy, they receive quality education. So on this occasion, I would like to share that it is our voice. We all come together and we ask the world leaders. We ask the world leaders to guarantee free education for 12 years for every child, whether girl or boy. And this is how we are going to go forward. If we want to see an end to poverty, if we want to see an end to violence, then this is the way we can go forward. Education for every child, free education for every child. And I'd also like to add that as there are going to be sustainable development goals agreements soon this year, so I'm hoping that the world leaders would try to think of the voices that these girls are raising, these women are raising, and they will try to make sure that secondary education is given priority and it is considered important and it is focused on. So I'm hoping for that. And also, as you can see that the world leaders, they would have daughters and all of them would like quality education for their daughter. And I guess none of them would say that, oh, just primary is enough or secondary is enough. They would want them to go to universities. So I'm hoping that for the daughters of the rest of the world, they would think of at least secondary free education. So this is my hope that we would see girls getting quality education, both girls and boys, because it's important. We want equality. And also, I believe that if we want to go forward, then we need to aim higher. So if our intentions, if our ambitions are higher, then we are going to achieve our goals. So my message to every girl, to every boy, every woman, every person is that aim higher. My message to every leader right now is that you also aim higher. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malala. Thank you. Well, I certainly know that we're not short of ambition in this room, and that we all do need to aim higher, and that we need to celebrate and be grateful for voices like Malala's, because it's voices like Malala's that ensure that we will be able to not only have every girl and every boy have every educational opportunity that each and every one would want, but that ultimately we're building a healthier and more equitable future for children and young people everywhere. Girl Up is an organization that is working to amplify the voices of girls and young women around the world, including the remarkable Girl Up Teen Advisor who will join us next, Morgan Wood. Morgan.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chelsea and America. It is a great honor to be in the same room with all of my role models. As a Girl Up Teen Advisor, I've had the opportunity to meet many of these role models, inspiring women from around the world who have helped me to learn what it means to be a leader. I know that a leader is someone who lifts up those around her, who inspires you to believe that no matter where you live and no matter what your gender, you can achieve anything. For all of us at Girl Up and millions more around the world, a leader is someone like our next speaker. Please help me welcome Her Excellency, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the President of the Republic of Liberia.
I want to thank the organizers for the opportunity to join all of you today. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the momentous event of Beijing, when the world came together mindful of the multiple constraints to equal access and participation, but committed to end the greatest inequity of all times, the marginalization of women. This report, timely, that's launched today, takes stock and measures the world performance in achieving the lofty goals that were established in Beijing in 1995. The gains are indeed impressive. Constitution and laws have been reformed to give more rights, economic and political rights to women. Access to education and health services have indeed expanded. The walls of tradition have fallen as women move into the professional areas of science and business, once dominated by men. More women are in parliament in more countries across the world. Rural women, farmers, and marketeers have found their voices. The glass ceiling of top leadership held firmly in place in Africa for over 50 years has now been broken. And may I add, I broke it. The 5 most powerful women leaders recognized by the Forbes survey are not only leaders of their countries, but leaders of the world. The gains are thus clear, but the gaps are clearer. Hundreds of thousands of women lose their lives as they give life. Over 1 million girls, mostly from poor families, are forced to drop from school and resort to prostitution or lack of income. Hundreds of nurses and midwives in Liberia lost their lives, making our country free of Ebola. The number of women in executive governance and parliament has increased, but only marginally. This has led to the conclusion that at today's pace, it will take 81 years to reach full equality, 75 years to reach remuneration between work for men and women of equal value, and more than 30 years to get gender balance in decision making. With painful reflection, too many of our countries have yet to muster the courage to ban their irreparable harm inflicted by genital mutilation on young girls in traditional societies. This year, this day, this event is a call to action. A call to actions for access, for equity, for equality. It is a call to the women leaders of the world, many of you here in this room, and those who are reaching us from afar, to accept this challenge. This is not in the script, but let me say to you, one of the best things I have is when I walked into a rural school and a young girl was coming up to me against the advice of her teacher, who said she should not, she should be sitting. And she walked up to me and said, "I want to be president." 10 years ago, she would probably be married off or be on the streets marketing. That young girl is what we all take the challenge for, to make sure she stays in school, to make sure she reaches her dreams, to make sure that she is able to become president. And so I'm pleased to be here today with Melinda Gates, with Secretary Clinton, with Chelsea, all of those, and ask them to join me as we reflect upon this report, what it's done, what it says, how we'll study it, and how we can change the world. Thank you.
Well, we couldn't think of a stronger, better note to end on than for you to hear from such an extraordinary leader. The story of the last 20 years tells us progress is possible. The data provides a roadmap for the unfinished business that remains. And I'm just thrilled that we could partner together in order to bring you this report. And we look forward to working with you in actually moving that progress even further. So I want to thank everyone who has worked with us today. Chelsea?
So thank you all for joining us today, whether here in the Best Buy Theater or on live stream. Thank you to the extraordinary women and men and young women who shared their stories with all of us. Thank you to our remarkable teams at the Clinton Foundation and the Gates Foundation, without whom none of this would have been possible. And although we're not there yet, we know we can get there if we go together. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.